Hello, everybody. This is Acts with Mihaela. Why am I talking about this tragic case from a week ago with the Reiner family? I am shocked by the horrific act that Rob Reiner did. I cannot believe it. As many people all over the world are feeling the same thing. Having watched a lot of the movies of the director Rob Reiner, having watched him in the sitcom All in the Family when he was only 23 years old, played the character Meathead. Meathead. He was such an amazing actor. And he himself, the same as his son Nick, he had to live up to the expectations of his father, Carl Reiner, who was a legend in the entertainment business. So he pretty much had to live in his shadow, the same as Nick Reiner must have felt about living in the shadow, in the shadow, in the shadow of his father. To me, I think what's so shocking lately in my life as I'm getting older, having gotten to watch a lot more true crime, I've become obsessed with watching trials because I realized as an acting teacher, that's what I do. I'm an acting teacher, I'm an acting coach. I work with actors, I work with directors for them to be able to understand the process of actors and become better directors, filmmakers. I'm realizing, having gotten to watch a lot of true crime and trials, the last one with the famous defense attorney Alan Jackson in the trial of Karen Reed. And I'm realizing more and more that attorneys, great attorneys, are also great storytellers. I used to think that acting was for people who are entertainers. But for many years now, the way that things are going in the world, we find out that more people of other professions are using tools of acting. And I'm thinking already of Alan Jackson and the story that he's already writing, he's already putting out there into the public of his client, Nick Reiner. But then at the same time, it's also scary to think that if you don't come from a privileged family, if you don't have famous parents like Nick Reiner did, you wouldn't stand a chance in the justice system. I can only imagine, God forbid, I don't even want to imagine. If anything happened to me, a mere mortal teacher, barely making it, and I don't have the means that Nick Reiner has due to his famous parents that he took out, he's still depending on them to be able to hire such an expensive and such an amazing storyteller, defense attorney as Ellen Jackson. What would happen to me? What would happen to me if I got myself in trouble? I'm not even talking about the horrific act. If I got myself in trouble, in a small trouble, nobody would know. Nobody would hear. I wouldn't have Ellen Jackson jump up wanting to be in the spotlight, just like actors do, just like entertainers do, making tons of money doing it. So even at this point, Nick Reiner, no matter how much he was in the shadow of his father, probably feeling inferior throughout all his life, having nothing to do with the way that his father or his mother made him feel or his siblings made him feel, but just because he did, he probably was realizing very soon on that he's got no talent that even measures to the talent of his father, who was one of the most celebrated directors who made movies of all kind of genres. He was probably feeling inadequate. And then on top of it, his drug use. Now, Ellen Jackson, like I was saying before, he's already starting to write the script of how the defense is going to go. Now, supposedly, he was found to have schizophrenia. They're already building the backstory of where this case is going to go. You know, all of these things, majority of them are being talked about, analyzed in the news by so many reporters, so many YouTubers. I think to me, one detail that kind of stays with me from hearing what happened the day that Rob and Michelle Reiner were discovered by their daughter. So the sister, the younger sister of Nick Reiner. Nick Reiner was the son in the middle. He has an older son, Jack. And I believe Romy Reiner is the youngest. She is being reported lives across the street from the parents' house, same property where Nick Reiner was residing. He was living on the same property in their guest house. Romy Reiner was living across the street from her parents. But the next detail that was reported about her being the one to discover the horrific act, to discover, I believe, her father, and she got so panicked, ran out of the house, and told her roommate. This is the one thing that kind of stuck with me outside of all the other things that were happening that nobody makes a huge deal about. So she walked out of the house after discovering her father, the director, the legendary Rob Reiner, but not Michelle Singer Reiner, her mother. She went outside. Supposedly, she called Billy Crystal, who's one of the best friends of her father, Rob Reiner. And she told her roommate. So when she came to check on her parents, she crossed the street from where she lived with her roommate. And she, while she was calling Billy Crystal, she told supposedly her roommate to call for help. And that got me to just thinking and questioning the situation and the relationship that the other children, Romy and Jake, the oldest brother of Nick Reiner, had with their parents. Nick Reiner, who's been in and out of rehabs for 15 years, Nick Reiner, who his parents were doing everything that they could for 15 years to try to help their son Nick. Even made a movie. Rob Reiner, the director, made a movie based loosely on the life of Nick Reiner, dealing with drugs, in and out of rehabs, the relationship between him and Nick. I saw the movie. It's not one of the top movies, but you could just see that it was one of those projects where the quality that Rob Reiner was able to bring to all of the movies that he made, no matter of the genre they were. This one, you could see that it was more of a project that he wanted to do for his son. This is what my observation was from the interviews that he and Nick Reiner were doing over that time that the movie came out about 10 years ago. And you could see that there was another tactic of Rob Reiner trying to engage his son into his creative process, to make him feel important, to bring him into the Hollywood club, because I'm sure that's what Nick wanted to do. Nick wanted to be a famous person. He probably wanted to be as famous, or if not more famous than his father. And he had nothing to support that. He didn't have any talent. He was a screenwriter. And this is the one story that he co wrote with somebody else, and his father directed. The movie Being Charlie is what it's called. And the movie is mediocre because I think Rob Reiner was trying to do it for his son. He was trying to do anything that he could to to keep his son close by, to make him feel like he belongs into this Hollywood royalty that the family is considered to be. His mother, Michelle Reiner, was also a producer. One of the ending from one of the ending from the movie The Best Comedy Ever, when Harry met Sally with Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal. Supposedly that was the time that Rob Reiner met Michelle Singer, and he actually changed the end of the film. The two main characters were not supposed to end up together, but because Rob Reiner, in his personal life, after having been single for 10 years, he was married before to Penny Marshall. She was also a famous actress. She had a sitcom on TV many years ago, absolutely brilliant. But after they divorced, she met Michelle Singer on set when he was filming When Harry Met Sally. I believe they were set up by a friend of his. He said that he knows somebody who's an amazing lady. She's a photographer, she's a producer. So they came. He was attracted to her. And because she provided that love into his life again, he decided to change the movie When Harry Met Sally and gave it the ending, which was the two main characters stay together. Because that's what great directors do. They allow their personal life to be part of the fictional life of the movies that they are creating. If you do not allow your personal life to be part of your creative process, if you do not allow who you are to penetrate the characters that you are making a movie about, nobody is going to relate to anything. It's due to his sensitivity as a director, it's due to his talent as an observer of human behavior that he was able to become the director that he was and have so many successful films that not just in the United States of America, people watch them and rewatch them. They can identify with characters from them, but all over the globe, all over, people know his movies. And then to think, as a great actor in All in the Family, as a great director of comedies, of dramas, of all sorts of different films, he had to have been a very knowledgeable artist, which would have made him a very aware human being who understands specific behavior of humans. For his characters to become so complex, for his characters to become so dynamic, he would have had to understand the human psychology, which in acting is then transformed into behavior. And that's what produces great final product, which is the movie that you are creating. But in the case of his son, he wasn't able to see what was about to come. I don't know what it's like to have a son. I don't know what it's like to have children. So I don't understand. I know there are parents, my parents, I have parents. I have a sister who has a beautiful son, my nephew, my husband is a grandfather. So I hear from them that it's very different when you have a child and how you would do anything for that child. But I don't understand that concept because I'm not a mother, so I don't understand that. That's why it shocks me so much that Rob Reiner, being such an amazing observer of human behavior, was not able to. No matter how many times his son Nick Reiner was in and out of rehab, in and out of doing drugs, he still let him be on the same property by allowing him to be in their guest house, which Nick, on some of the interviews that he did, I believe 10 years ago when he was promoting the movie that his father gifted him with, being Charlie, he talked about the guest house of his parents as if it was his house, you know. But then that takes me back to the day of the discovery of this tragic act. So Romy goes from across the street with her roommate because on Sunday last week, they had a massage appointment with someone who was trying to call them. Nobody answered. Then I believe Romy got called. She went to see what was going on, found the father. Can't even imagine. I mean, the trauma that she must live with for the rest of her life. And then knowing that allegedly, her brother Nick did that to their parents, walked out, called Billy Crystal, who's one of Rob Reiner, like I said, best friends, and then told her roommate to call for help. To me, my question is, Romy is an aspiring actress, from what I understand. And I believe her brother, her oldest brother, Jake, is also living somewhere else. I think he's a journalist. I'm not sure about that. A reporter. He's he does something in the media, but I don't know exactly what. I'm just thinking, and I don't know if this is a stupid thought that's crossing my mind. Maybe it's because I don't know. Like I said, I don't have children, but I do have siblings. Like I said, I have my sister, I have my parents. Why was she living with a roommate? Why was Romy, who had no struggles with drugs, she wasn't creating any kind of trouble for her parents, from what I understand? Why did she have to have a roommate? Did she have a roommate because she wanted to have a roommate? When Nick, who was the one struggling, and I'm sure he was giving so much grief and he was giving so much emotional distress to his parents who were trying so hard to help him over the years to get him to do something with his life, to get him to stop taking drugs. I mean, they were paying $70,000 to this place where he was under psychiatric supervision, but he wasn't an inpatient. He would just go and come. Because from the very beginning, if you listen to the interviews that Nick Reiner did when promoting his movies and some of the videos that he was trying to make where his talent is non existent, you could see that he was never, just from those, my observation, in my opinion, he was never wanting to recover. He was never wanting to get clean from his use of drugs. He was always kind of proud of creating that persona. He was seeing himself as creating a persona. I think it was his lack of talent or his envy of his father's success, of his grandfather's success. Like I said, Carl Reiner was a legend. So Rob Reiner also had to make something of himself because he was living in the shadow of his father and he was able to do that. He was able to do that. But Nick was creating this persona on the podcast that he was talking with different people and when promoting his movie that his father gifted him with, I believe, in my opinion. And he was proud of this persona. He was proud of taking drugs. He was talking as if there was never a moment where you say, oh my God, this guy really, really was working so hard to try to get clean. He was almost like proud of it in so many ways, from what I'm understanding. And I'm looking at this from the point of view of an acting teacher, from my acting perspective. If I were analyzing characters with actors that I'm working with, or if I were looking at characters when reading a play or watching a film, and I would think, okay, what is the psychology behind this character? Why are they behaving this way? What are the relationships between these characters and the other characters in these fictional stories? Even though the fictional stories are that fictional, the behavior of the characters has to be real. That's why I keep going back to the director Rob Reiner and knowing how brilliant he was due to having seen his movies. It's still hard for me to understand how he was not able to see in depth into his son Nick and understand that there was time for them to do something differently than what they have tried for so many years. You know, not to I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not doing that. I'm just trying to kind of understand how is it possible that somebody as amazing, as brilliant of a writer, of a director, of an actor, understanding the human psychology and understanding his characters to give us such dynamic, filled with different nuances, characters. Like the one other movie that comes to me is the one with Jack Nicholson. What is the name? Jack Nicholson, A Few Good Men, Demi Moore, Tom Cruise. When there's so many different nuances to all of those characters in that movie, and you as a director are the one that's guiding those actors to get to those psychological behaviors of those characters, so you have to understand them. You have to be a psychologist to become such a famous director. That's what I'm trying to say. So you have to be an understander. You have to understand. You have to be an observer of human behavior, human psychology. But I guess when it comes to your personal circle, when it comes to your son, you don't want to believe that there could be something that's so horrific. I mean, even though now they're saying within the last couple of weeks that Rob Reiner was confiding in someone allegedly that he was afraid of his son, Nick Reiner. And then going back to Romy, I keep going back to Romy. And the youngest, not the youngest, the oldest son, Jake. Supposedly, to get someone like Ellen Jackson, the family had to have been involved in getting their brother such a well known defense attorney. Yet, Romy, the sister, was living across the street from the house of their parents, but not on her own, the same way that Nick Reiner had the guest house on his own. No matter what he did, he lived without a roommate. He didn't have to share the space. But Romy had a roommate. So I'm just trying to figure out, if I were, like I said, I have a sister. If I watch my parents, which I never did see, but if I watch my parents giving more, or not just money, now I'm not just talking financially, but giving more attention. But even though I understand, let's just say my sister needed more attention, or let's just say I needed more attention at times, I understand that then the parents have to focus on that particular child. But when you see that being done by your parents to your brother, who's been doing this for 17 times, he was in the rehab and then he went back on drugs. He didn't want to go there anymore. He didn't want to be an inpatient. He didn't want to do the work. He never wanted to do the work. That's what I'm getting. I never see somebody who had an objective or a goal to do the work. But Romy was the one that had a roommate. And again, I'm just saying this because that was kind of stuck into my brain, and that question came to me as if I were like, you know, when I watch people, I just have all these things that are coming to me because I'm working with characters and behaviors and psychology. So I'm an acting coach, I'm an acting teacher, and I've been working with trying to decipher and trying to figure out characters to try to make them as believable as real people when being played by actors. Ellen Jackson, I don't know if you watched the Karen Reed trial, the first and the second, that he defended her. He was the main supporter and defense attorney in her team. He's already coming out. I mean, the first thing that he said, and the only thing that he said about this a couple of days ago, he said that this is a very complicated case and that we should try not to speculate. We should try not to understand or try to understand, because it's a very complex case. It's a very complex case because he wants to get ahead and have his own narrative in favor of Nick, of course, because that's what a defense attorney does. But I'm just going back to what I said before. If I were doing something that was illegal, and I'm not even referring to such a horrific act, but if I did something small, I wouldn't have anybody to do my narrative to get me on the right side of the public, of the audience, of the global audience who's going to be watching this trial if it goes to trial. So TMZ reported that Nick Reiner was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Who was their source? I don't know. They can give out sources, but hmm, having watched Alan Jackson defend Karen Reed, the way that he knew how to play the story so brilliantly to make so many people believe that Karen Reed was innocent, and he did it. He got her to not be responsible for the death of her police officer husband. No, she wanted him to be her husband, boyfriend, John O'Keefe. She put it out there together with Ellen Jackson into the global audience for people to start supporting her from the very beginning, before it even got to the court, before the case was even gotten to the court. And then the jurors for the second trial found her not guilty of John O'Keefe's murder. After that, you saw the jurors who were so eager to come out and talk about their experience, having realized that this is such a huge case. So that's what I'm saying, like law and order now, justice system, it's all becoming an entertainment spectacle. It's all becoming a stage. Everybody wants to be famous. Attorneys, politicians, doctors, everybody has a YouTube channel, including myself. I have a YouTube channel. Yeah, we all want to get to speak our opinions. We all want to be heard. Who doesn't want to be heard? I think everybody wants to be heard and appreciated for something. So now Ellen Jackson is going to represent Nick Reiner, who is supposedly in a fog at this time. It's been reported that he doesn't even know what he's done. How do you already know that he doesn't know what he's done? Has he had doctors already, psychiatrists, do an intense evaluation of what's going on with him now, what was happening with him before? Even that, who can afford to get all of the things that are going to be necessary that Alan Jackson will provide for his client? If you don't have the means, if you don't have the financial situation, if you don't have the status that Nick Reiner has. So even now, he's still being helped by the fact that he is lucky enough to be the son of Rob and Michelle Reiner. But he never could appreciate that, in my opinion. When I'm thinking about, if I'm watching their life from outside before all of this happened, I would be thinking, my God, what an amazing family. I mean, think of this. To have a father who's a brilliant director, who's a brilliant actor, which makes him a brilliant director because he understands the actor's work, because he was an actor first, to have a mother who's a producer, who's doing a lot of work together with her husband. They're helping a lot of charities, they're doing a lot of good thing for a lot of people. And to have the opportunities to come from that family, I would have been like, oh my God, I am so thankful. I am so grateful. Now I can have an easier path to try to achieve my goals. But then you get an in depth look. You pull the curtain back from what we see presented to us, and we realize that it doesn't matter your status, it doesn't matter the money you have, it doesn't matter who your parents are, it doesn't matter. We're all human beings, and some of us can commit horrific, impossible to even dream of, or having your worst nightmares acts like Nick Reiner did. I can't. I can't. Shivers down my back. So I'm just, you know, I'm just, is the family going to be supporting Nick Reiner? Is Romy, she never made it as a famous actress. I think that's what she's aspiring to be. I believe on her Instagram, she's an actress, she says a model. Oh, and another thing, I saw this interview that was done by Rob Reiner and his brother and sister. And his brother, I believe, is a painter. And his sister, I believe she said she's a psychoanalyst. She's in psychology. So to think that they even had somebody in the family who was involved with psychology much more than, I was talking about Rob Reiner understanding psychology due to him being a director and an actor. I want to see Goodbye. They're very good movies. Hello, 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 Horse Girlie 2012. Thank you so much for being here. I'm learning how to do this. Libby Wilson, heading out and we'll catch replay later. Wishing everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I know. I'm gonna Happy New Year. Happy Christmas. Happy Christmas. They're very good movies. Yes. Goodbye. Okay, say goodbye. Thank you so much for being here. And then I found this article on page 6, and I was going to go through it briefly because it just brings shivers down my spine. It's so incredibly freaky when you now look back to what could have happened. Another thing that I was thinking about, Romy was living across the street. The sister was living across the street. And she reportedly, it's been said, that was afraid of her brother. But at the same time, she considered him to be her best friend. I think in one of the videos of Nick Reiner, that all of his videos and podcasts are now coming out. In one of them, I think she was in a clip with him, and there was a dog that started barking while they were being filmed. And out of nowhere, he just says, "I'm gonna go kill that dog." I mean, who says that? I don't know. I guess we wouldn't be looking at those moments if this never happened, if this tragedy never happened, to mean something bigger than, oh, I'm gonna, jokingly, I'm trying to be funny, I'm gonna make a joke. The character in the movie that was made loosely on himself, being Charlie. The character wants to be a comedian. He's wanting to be a famous comedian. But in real life, I understand that Nick Reiner wanted to be a screenwriter without ever writing any script except for the one that his father directed, being Charlie. Even that, there was a picture of them, I believe, from the set of the movie. The movie came out 10 years ago. There was a picture of all of them. There was a picture of Nick Reiner. There was a picture of his father. There was a picture of Jake, the brother, and Michelle. And you could see that everybody was so happy for him. I They probably believed that that was going to get him off the drugs for good, because he was going to be feeling like he's part of the entertainment business. So his father was trying everything. He made a film about him and had him on set to give his opinion on who the actors were going to be and how the movie was going to be shot, and he did everything he could. He was very, as an artist, I believe that Rob Reiner, the father, was a very sensitive human being. I don't know any of these people. This is just my interpretation from an acting perspective. It's just my opinion. But I believe for him to be able to create such brilliant movies, he had to have been a very sensitive and somewhat naive person at the same time. I'm wondering who between him and Michelle were the ones that were much more strict with Nick Reiner. And I'm sure, and I'm wondering if there was any kind of, it had to have been, I'm sure there had to have been so many emotional filled conflicts between all the members of the family. And then to take the son to the Conan O'Brien party the night before this happened, the Saturday before, they were discovered in their house, butchered, from what we're getting. They probably took him to Conan O'Brien's house because they were afraid to leave him alone. I also heard that Romy, the sister, was invited and she was also at the party, but I don't know that for sure. So if you guys know that for sure, please let me know. Because if she was not invited, if Romy, who lived across the street, who lives across the street from the house of her parents, maybe they took him to the party so they wouldn't leave him alone, to give him the opportunity to maybe go and bother his sister Romy across the street. I was thinking about that too. Could that have been, excuse me, could that have been one of the motive also? I don't know. I don't know. It's just, were the other two children, was Romy and Jake feeling at any time left out due to how much energy and how much spending of emotions and financial support the parents had to give to Nick Reiner due to his mental illness that he was dealing with, supposedly mental health issues and drug addiction? I just, I don't know. I just don't know how much this was drug addiction and how much it was mental illness, and how much was Nick wanting to get better. Was he ever wanting to get better? Did he ever want to get better? Because from the bits that I've heard of his interviews and videos that I've seen of him, I don't think he was ever serious about getting better. Because I think that he was very afraid of being lost. I think he realized that he was not going to impress anybody with a talent that he was going to surprise everybody with. So I think for him, this persona that he created, the drug addict, the mental health problems on top of it, in and out of rehabs, getting the attention of the parents all the time, was what gave him the impression that he was someone. He was being seen, he was being paid attention to. Sad. It's so sad. So there was this article that I came across and I just thought it was page 6, I believe. Yes, page 6. I stayed with Rob and Nick Reiner weeks before grisly murders. What I saw inside the family home. So this was just weeks before. Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, were enjoying loving dinners and TV times with their children just weeks before being violently stabbed to death. Cinematographer Barry Markowitz, one of Rob's close friends and longtime collaborators, exclusively spoke to Page Six about recently staying at the Reiner residence in Brentwood, California. That's where this happened. So it was just a few weeks before that this guy, a close friend, collaborator, usually when directors find a cinematographer can that they can creatively understand each other in their projects and how they see the story being told, they will work with the same cinematographers. I may have been I may have been, he says, so the cinematographer says, I may have been one of the last people to see them. I may have been one of the last people to see them, he shared with us over the phone on Tuesday. But I thought the last people to have seen them were the people at Conan O'Brien's party. Maybe he's talking in a personal, intimate, family atmosphere. Maybe all of them. Maybe he's the last one to have seen all the family together. And here's a picture of this is Romy, that's Nick, that's Rob Reiner, Michelle Reiner, and Jake. Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, enjoyed a loving environment with their family in their California home just weeks before the tragic deaths. And I think this is the cinematographer next to Rob Reiner in this picture. It has to be. Cinematographer Barry Markowitz, who was one of Rob's close pals and collaborators, recently stayed at the Reiner residence. Can you imagine how he must be thinking, what he must be thinking right now? Knowing that we're going to find out from this article that Nick Reiner was at home. Brr, shivers down my spine. Markowitz, so this is the cinematographer, Markowitz explained to Page Six that Rob had invited him to stay at his home while he was in town for the November 14th premiere of his latest film, The Perfect Gamble. They would say, you're staying here. You're not going to the hotel. There's no fridge, good toilet paper, no family. The Tel Aviv based director of photography recalled. Okay, so he was from Tel Aviv. He was in town for one of his movies that was coming out. So the Reiners were saying, you're staying with us. That shows, their generosity towards someone who was a collaborator and a creative person he had worked with. So, of course, if they're generous to somebody who's not even part of their family, of course, they're going to be as generous, as giving, as loving to Nick Reiner, because I don't know how any parent at any time can ever think of their kid being violent, no matter what. No matter the Nick Reiner talks about in one of the podcasts, the violence and the destroying of his guest house. And he was laughing about it. It doesn't matter. You just think, well, those are things that he's punching. Those are things that he's destroying. He would never do that to me. Even though it's also been reported that Rob Reiner, in the last weeks before this tragic act, right before the holidays, when you see the house and you see the house, their beautiful house from the outside, pictures of it, decorated for Christmas, for holidays, for you see those beautiful globes on the trees, overlooking outside, flowing over the gates. To think that Nick Reiner had the guest house on the same property. I don't even know how Romy must have felt knowing that she was in such close proximity to her brother. She lived across the street with a roommate. Why did she have a roommate? I'm asking, why did she have a roommate? And Nick Reiner did not have a roommate. He was given more. He was given his own space without a roommate. I had a roommate in my youth when I moved to New York, and it's not fun. It's better to have your own space. So why did Romy have a roommate? I don't know. Maybe she wanted to not be alone. I don't know. Was it because she wasn't making the money? She wasn't getting the same amount of money from the parents that Nick was getting? Because she wasn't dealing with drug addiction and mental health. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying it. I don't know. It's strange to me. This question that comes to my mind. Markowitz joined Rob, Michelle, and their kids, Nick 32 and Romy 28, as they went about their days, business as usual. The couple's other son, Jake 34, was busy elsewhere with work. So Jake 34, Nick 32, and Romy 28. There they are. Even in this picture, if you look at this picture, if you look at the difference in appearance, in the expressions of Rob Reiner, there's the smile, but you can still see there's a sadness under the smile. Like if you look in the eyes, he was probably so exhausted and he was probably just didn't know what else to do. He was probably always having in the back of his mind, how do I get to help my son? And then you see Michelle here, she looks sad, tired. I don't know how long ago this picture was taken before the tragedy. And this is their house, I guess. They would say, you're staying here, you're not going to no hotel. There's no fridge, toilet paper, no family. Markowitz recalled. This is such a European, this is such a Romanian way of doing things. It's like when we travel to other families or to other cities and we have family who lives there, we don't stay in hotels. Even if the other people or people come to us, we buy mattresses and we sleep on the floor, even if it's not a big enough space. But we don't, we stay with the family. Romy was in and out of the house, and at dinner time, she comes over and we all bullshit together, Markowitz said, while describing their time together. So it just seemed like everything was going normal. We would scream at the TV, we watched a movie and a basketball game, played with the dogs, family time, one big love fest. Weeks before, never know what's going to happen tomorrow. That's why we have to be so grateful for today and for each freaking moment that we have. Markowitz noted that Nick, who has publicly struggled with drug addiction issues since he was a teenager, seemed to be on the upswing. How do you know somebody's on the upswing? If you're not a expert, I don't know. For somebody to destroy the guest house and then kind of talk about it on a podcast the way that he talks about it, with no shame, but with this kind of, oh, I am someone, I'm a bad boy, I've destroyed my guest house. Upswing, upswing. Is that an upswing? Is that part of being on the upswing? I don't know when that happened. I'm just all these kind of things that I've heard being reported, they're just coming to me. He looked great. Talking about Nick, Markowitz says, the cinematographer. He was sitting and talking with the family Markowitz shared. They eat dinner together, old school, and a lot of love. Always a lot of love. Is that the picture being seen by someone who wanted to see that? Was that something they presented to others? Was that something that they wished so, so much for, to have that coming together, to have that love be the healing that Nick Reiner needed? Was that for real there? Or was it their wish to have been there? Rob Reiner talks in one of his interviews, because now they give so many of his interviews from over the years. And he talks about the fact that when he was a single man again after divorcing Penny Marshall, the first wife, with whom I believe she had a daughter. So then he adopted that daughter. So he has another daughter, Tracy, from the marriage with Penny Marshall. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. He says that after they divorced, that he was a single man for 10 years. He was so naive when he came to dating again. He made such a mess of his life. And he didn't know until he was 40 that there were real orgasms, that women could do orgasms that were fake. He believed that the orgasms that all women had were real. He couldn't believe that they could fake orgasms. And that's why the scene, the most known scene from when Harry met Sally, was the one at the table with Meg Ryan when she's proving to Billy Crystal's character, who's very much based on Rob Reiner, that she could convince him at the table in a diner that she could have an orgasm and he was going to believe her to be true when in fact it was false. And after she finishes doing that orgasm in this public place in a diner in the movie, there was an older lady who was sitting next to their table. And that was Rob Reiner's real mom, who had the line to the waiter after having seen what an amazing time Meg Ryan was having demonstrating an orgasm to Billy Crystal's character. And the mother, the character, says to the waiter, I'll have what she's having, because that was so believable to be real. So Meg Ryan's character was convincing Billy Crystal, but it was actually the Billy Crystal character was based on Rob Reiner. So he says that he was naive. Sensitive people, sensitive, brilliant artists, directors like he was, tend to be naive because you have to be a child for your entire career to be able to still bring these fictional stories to life and give them credibility and make them universally understood and believed by everybody, no matter the background, no matter the country you come from. So he was a child at heart, I'm sure, in so many things, believing that Nick Reiner was going to be okay if they can just feed him love, 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 and everything else that they did. So the cinematographer says he looked great, referring to Nick when he was staying there. He was sitting and talking with the family. They ate dinner together, old school, and a lot of love, always a lot of love. Markowitz worked with Rob on several films. See, I told you, Markowitz, the cinematographer, when you find somebody you want to work with as a director and the relationship, the creative relationship is mutual and you feel the same way about the other creator, of course you're going to be working together because you don't have to communicate so much. You can just understand what you want from each other and just go and do the movie the best way that both of you can tell it. The cinematographer detailed what it was like to stay with the Reiner family for 5 days. He stayed for 5 days. That's a long time. So I'm sure he must have seen something in those 5 days. If he never saw anything else but love, that must have been one of the great weeks that they experienced. I'm sure they had a lot of those when Nick Reiner probably wasn't going crazy. Markowitz told us that during his visit, Nick would go out and play tennis or shoot hoops. He was also around and present during dinner time. He helped out, he took out the garbage, he washed TV, he washed dishes. The award winning cinematographer recalled he'd bring me something to drink. He was just normal in that sense. But he wasn't, that's not normal. He helped out, he took out the garbage, he watched TV, he washed dishes. The award winning cinematographer recalled he'd bring me something to drink. He was just no, that's not normal. This is not normal. He was 32 years old. I mean, if you were a kid, it seems like you're describing a kid. There was a kid that was living with the parents because he's not an adult yet. So he was kind of doing chores that a kid would do. That's kind of weird. So I don't know. Is the cinematographer just trying to recall what he wishes to have been the outcome of this family and that the tragedy never would have happened? I'm sure they're devastated. Everybody is. People who don't know them. I'm devastated and I don't even know who they are. I'm in shock because I can't help but just put myself in that human situation. Scary, scary to know that this world is a scary place. And it's one thing that you're scared of strangers or something might happen to you accidentally in life, which is, that happens. But to know that it's someone that's so close to you that can do such horrific things, it's the worst possible thing that you can think of. They were busy working and doing stuff, he said, of the Reiners. The help was there, the secretaries were there, in and out of the house, business as usual. It's been said, it's been reported about the house being open most of the time. Their gates were open, a lot of people coming and going. They were very friendly with the neighbors. Look at these. Look at these brothers and sister. Oh God. Can't even imagine what they're going through. I mean, I guess, yeah, you're gonna, if they were the ones to get Alan Jackson as his defense attorney, I guess you would do that. He's still their brother, no matter. And they know how much the parents loved him and how much the parents they gave of themselves to him. They didn't even consider their safety. They didn't consider the safety of Jake and Romy, or did they? I don't think they ever thought that anything like this was possible from Nick. Did they consider their safety? No, their own safety. Maybe they thought they had it under control by keeping an eye on him. Maybe they tried to protect other people by dragging him around to the Conan O'Brien's party. I don't know. Maybe he wanted to go to be part of the Hollywood royalty, A-listers. Make me famous, Dad. He tried. He gave him the film. This picture, even in this picture, this is so strange. Everybody's looking. This is Jake, this is Romy, this is Michelle, beautiful woman, Rob Reiner, and this is Nick. He's the only one out of all of them who's looking not at the camera, but he's looking at Romy. What does that say? If I'm looking at these people and I'm looking at him as a character like him, Nick Reiner, I would notice him. You would notice if this was on a theatrical stage or this was in a movie, you'd be like, why? He's not looking at the camera. What does he have going through his head? That's me from an acting perspective, trying to figure out. Markowitz described his 5 night stay with the Reiners as a blast. I think what's puzzling the most, the 3060, is that there was so much love that it doesn't jive, Markowitz said, referring to Nick being arrested on charge of murdering his parents. Love. I think what's puzzling the most, the 360, is that there was so much love that it doesn't jive, Markowitz said, referring to Nick being arrested on charge of murdering his parents. Love doesn't solve everything. So many people are taking their partners out because of love. It starts with love, it goes, continues with love, but then it gets to something else. Gets to something else. I'm not here to judge anyone. Love is the only thing I saw, and I don't think it was fake. They had a real bond. That doesn't guarantee anything. You have a real bond with somebody, that doesn't guarantee anything. If you have a person who is on drugs almost his entire life from the time that he was 14, his brain is going to be deformed. Something will happen. And then when you see the same child doesn't want to get better, even once, then love is not sufficient to protect or help that person, and more importantly, to protect yourself, to protect your other children. I feel so bad. I feel so bad. This is who, I mean, my God, to have the life that these people had, to have accomplished all of the dreams that anybody could have dreamed of. I'm referring to Rob Reiner and Michelle, to have a loving relationship between the two of them, to have 3 beautiful children from this marriage, and to have the opportunity, the means, the status, to feel like you've made it, you've done it. People are going to be helped because of you. They helped a lot of charities. Their $200 million estate value will be distributed to his children, to charities. We don't know about Nick yet. There's a lot of discussions and talks about who's paying for Alan Jackson and all the rest. And then to still have this tragedy happen. Life. The film experts said Rob and Michelle did everything they could for their troubled son. The film expert said, so it's probably the same cinematographer said, Rob and Michelle did everything they could for their troubled son. Nobody's saying that they didn't. They probably did too much. And look at this picture. Nick was acting normal and helped with household chores. Household chores are for kids. He should have been doing so much more. How long was he allowed to do nothing? Markowitz told Page Six that Rob and Michelle never ever gave up on Nick during his very public battle with drug addiction over the years. See, he's not mentioning the mental health, he's not mentioning schizophrenia. So I'm wondering if that's something that Alan Jackson just decided to add on to start building his narration in the best way that he can to defend Nick Reiner. They gave him everything. They tried a million things with him, not giving him money, but sending him to top of the lines places, he explained, referring to Nick's multiple stints in rehab. Rob never gave up. He tried everything. If you knew Rob, he was just a bundle of love. Yes, bundle of love. Seven. Yeah, you can see it from the characters that he created in all his movies. It's the director's vision that the movie comes out to then move people to tears and to move people to want to be better as human beings. As for Michelle, Marco was described her as a balabusta, using the Yiddish word for an exceptionally skilled homemaker. She was a producer. I wonder if she was, I don't know. There was, oh, this just reminded me because she's described as an amazing house homemaker. There was another clip that comes to mind that I listened to of Nick when he was promoting his movie Being Charlie, his movie Gifted. Gifted. I mean, can you imagine if I had the opportunity to have somebody in the family to say, I'll give you this platform for you to make a movie or to make a show, whatever, because I've wanted to do that for the longest time. That was my dream before I became a teacher. Can you imagine that? And then to right after doing that, having that opportunity to do that, to not appreciate it because I wanted more. I was gonna hold on to the public persona, the interesting public persona that I created for myself, starting drugs and being a nuisance and being making my mom and my dad's life miserable, my siblings. But he did it because he could do it and was able to continue doing it. This clip that I was thinking of, he talks about it. Nick Reiner talks about one event where he came home in the middle of the night and that scared the out of me, knowing what had just happened and supposedly that they were butchered in their home in the bedroom. He recalls an event, this was years ago, where he came home high on drugs, acid or something. I don't know drugs. I've never taken drugs, so I don't even know the names. I mean, I do know the names, but I don't know the effect of drugs on people unless I see it from what I'm being told by others and I'm learning. But he described coming home in the middle of the night, going in the parents' bedroom, and I was like, oh my God, this was years before. Can you imagine? He did the same thing this time, only it ended up so tragically. He went into the mother and father's bedroom. He says it. I'm rephrasing. And I was high on acid. And my mother, and he was explaining, my mother was like, I want nothing to do with this. And he was even like trying to imitate his mom's voice. Nothing to do with this. And she got out. She's like, I can't deal with this right now. She got out of the bedroom and she went to sleep on the couch, I believe he says, the mother. Nick says that the mother couldn't deal with it and she went to sleep on the couch. But that the father, Rob Reiner, was alongside, next to him on the bed, side to side, for 8 hours, trying to calm him down, wanting to help him come off of the drugs that he was in. So he was like, you're going to come down. So the father was there. I think the father was the one that was, I'm going to make him better. I'm going to make him better. Hmm. So imagine that night that he describes. That was a night when he went into their bedroom. So he knew the house with each corner like the back of his hand. And the mother couldn't deal with it and she left to sleep on the couch. But the father, Rob Reiner, was trying to calm him down for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. It's just scary to think that he, like now, just the image that I have in my head of him going into the parents' dark bedroom after they came home from Conan O'Brien's party, if that's to be believed, that he was there. Did they live together? We don't know. Was Romy there? I think somewhere I heard that she was there, then other people said she wasn't. Are we going to hear from those people? What are they thinking? Oh my God, we could have called the police. I think also this was being said that somebody wanted to call the police because of the behavior of Nick being so crazy that they thought that he was somebody off of the street. He wasn't dressed in the tuxedo required dressing up party Christmas that Conan O'Brien supposedly does for the A-listers every year. He was dressed in a hoodie and So that did they come home together? Who left first? I know there's a video that you can see Nick Reiner walking around, some say before the tragic act he committed on both his parents. And there's a video after when he then goes to check into a hotel and he's. But, we'll see what Alan Jackson comes up with. We'll see if the family says anything more than what they said. They just said, they try to be private at this mourning time and traumatic time for them, and they wish that we try not to speculate. So I'm sure they're still, I don't know, maybe they are. I guess they're supportive of of their sibling because their parents were. Or maybe they're thinking, we've told the parents so many times that something else needs to be done. There have to be different tactics. As an acting coach, when you're working with actors and you're trying to get something from the other character, one character tries something from the other character, he's not getting it or she's not getting it. You try the tactic again, you try it again, it doesn't work, then you have to try another tactic because you can't keep trying the same thing over and over. And the Reiners have tried many different tactics. But I think another speculation, another thing that being speculated about is that they've tried the latest try was that they were trying to do what Britney Spears had done to her by her father, conservatorship, when they were trying to get the legal rights over Nick Reiner, and maybe that would have been the trigger that made him do what he did. May their soul rest in peace. May the family be strong enough. Romy, Jack, every other member of the family in dealing with this and their loved ones. It's such a tragedy. Even here now, looking back, look at his eyes. Nick Reiner's eyes, the way that he looks at his father. I don't know. I don't know. It's easy to say that now. I think it was puzzling to me. Oh, I read this. Another picture. This is the graduation of Romy, I guess. He lovingly described Michelle as the kingpin of the household. Being Charlie, so this is the movie. Rob Reiner film, directed by Rob Reiner, screenplay by Nick Reiner and Matt, somebody else. But he gave him credit. I think this is the only credit that Nick Reiner has as a screenwriter. Probably he thought after this movie he was gonna become famous. He even met with a PR person that comes on all these other shows. And many years ago, and he was saying that he wanted to be famous. He went to this public relation person wanting to be famous. And when he was asking about, did you bring any script, any writing for me to see? He's like, yeah. It's like he never wanted to do the work. He just wanted to be famous, like his father, without doing the work. Rob Reiner did the work, no matter that his father was famous before him. He had to prove himself to the world because you can be the child of somebody famous. You can have an opportunity to do a film like he did, but if you have no talent, if you don't have any work that's based in something that you can do really well and be a creative person, you're not gonna last. You cannot, because people do not relate to what you're creating. They're not going to relate to the fact, oh, I'm going to like this film because it's Nick Reiner, so he's the son of Rob Reiner. No, they're going to be like, I don't relate to these characters that this guy wrote as a screenwriter, so I don't care who he is. He could be anybody. Marco was denied that there was any tension between Rob and Nick on the set of their Being Charlie film. Because I guess I think one of the actors from the movie Being Charlie whose scenes got cut out, I think he said something. He said something about the fact that Rob and Nick were having a lot of issues There were a lot of arguments, screaming matches on the movie set of being Charlie. So even then, creatively, because Nick probably wanted to take over the whole project, thinking that he knows it all, he wanted to surpass his father. But then somebody else was saying that they would make up and everything would be okay, and they would see Rob Reiner and Nick Reiner kiss on the lips. And that's kind of strange. Somebody was bringing this in. I don't know if this is something that's being brought in already by storyteller, the other storyteller from the defense attorney, Alan Jackson, to try to, I don't know, bring some other elements to the whole story, as he loves to create fictional stories for his clients. He does it really well, so I must give him that. Markowitz, who was the cinematographer, Markowitz, the same cinematographer on the 2015 film Being Charlie, written by Nick and directed by Rob, also denied that there was any father son tension on the movie set. I cannot remember no tension. We were just having a decent time, all of us, one big family. I think he's being too lovey-lovey about the way that he describes everything. No lovey-lovey can be happening every moment of every time you are being with another person. So he saw lovey-lovey at home when he was staying at their house for 5 days, and then he saw lovey-lovey all the time on the set. That could not happen. Having been on sets as an acting coach, working for with directors and actors, there's not just lovey-lovey. No. No matter if you're working with somebody who's struggling with drugs or mental health. There's no lovey-lovey all the time. So I don't know if he's trying to just tell one, or maybe that's what he wants to see or what he wanted to see. Markowitz went on to tell us that Rob and Michelle had no reason to think that Nick would ever hurt them, despite Nick admitting to once destroying his parents' home during a drug-fueled rage. Rob never had fears for his safety. I'm not in his head, but we talked. Nick wasn't the violent type, he alleged. I slept in the same house as Nick. There was never a thought, I believe, in Rob's head that Nick was a danger. If he would have thought his life was in peril at any point, he would have handled the situation. Look at this picture. This is, when they say look into people's eyes and you'll be able to tell in their soul, you'll be able to see in their soul. They're the windows to their soul. Mm. Nick was arrested on murder charges Monday after his parents were found stabbed to death in their home Sunday. With Nick being arrested in connection with the murders, Markowitz said he doesn't believe Rob and Michelle's son had any motive to harm his parents. When somebody's mentally disturbed, you don't need a reason. There's no rhyme or reason. He explained mental illness, that's the reason. Markowitz, who worked on 3 films with Rob and viewed him like a brother, said he is totally broken after losing his friend. I can't believe they're not here. He said of Rob and Michelle. I'm looking at the iPad. Everything is Rob. Reiner. I started crying. I want to call him up and say, hey, buddy. Yeah, the Rob was like my family. 4 or 5 days later, I'm here in his effing nightmare. And this just continues to tell the story of how they met and everything. I guess, you don't want to believe that there is violence, but he says that, but then other people reportedly said that towards the last, before this happened, within weeks, Rob Reiner supposedly confessed that he was afraid of his son. So I don't know which is the truth yet. We're going to find out much more. But this is my take on the tragic act that a son, Nick Reiner, committed by butchering his parents. It's horrible. Thank you everyone for watching. Please let me know what you think of what I'm saying. This is again my acting understanding of human psychology transformed into behavior. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor. I'm just an acting teacher, a mere mortal. Thank you everyone. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Mwah.